The peaceful Montana dawn shattered with the roar of truck engines. Max, a 2-year-old German shepherd, jerked awake as the unfamiliar sounds echoed across Willow Creek Ranch. His keen ears picked up the crunch of tires on gravel, men's voices whispering harshly. These weren't the familiar sounds of Margaret Sullivan, his beloved owner. No, these sounds spelled danger. Max's muscles tensed as he spotted 3 men in dark clothing slipping between the fence posts. Their faces were obscured by caps pulled low, but their intentions were clear from the tranquilizer guns and wire snares clutched in their gloved hands. The leader, a tall man with a jagged scar across his jaw, motioned silently toward the kennels where Max and his family slept. Blood pounded in Max's ears. His mother Bella was already on her feet, hackles raised, a low growl building in her throat. The other shepherds stirred, sensing the imminent threat. Max knew what was coming before the first shot hissed through the air. Hope you enjoyed this story. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear where you're watching from. Now, let's continue with the story. Go! Bella's sharp bark galvanized the pack into action. The yard erupted into chaos. Tranquilizer darts whizzed through the morning air as Max and the other shepherds scattered, racing toward the tree line beyond the pasture. The men shouted, abandoning stealth for speed as they sprinted back to their trucks. "Don't let them get away!" the scarred man shouted. "Those purebreds are worth $5,000 each." Jake Miller had been tracking this ranch for weeks. Margaret Sullivan bred some of the finest German shepherds in Montana, and with her away visiting her sister in Billings, the opportunity was perfect. He hadn't expected the dogs to react so quickly. Max raced alongside Bella, leading the younger dogs toward the forest. He glanced back to see 2 trucks bouncing across the pasture, gaining on them rapidly. Bella nudged him urgently. "Take the others through the creek," she commanded. "I'll draw them away." Before Max could protest, Bella veered sharply left, barking loudly to attract attention. 2 of the younger shepherds hesitated, confused by the split, but Max herded them forward with determined nips at their heels. "Follow me," he ordered, plunging toward the creek bed. Jake spotted the older shepherd breaking away. "That one," he shouted, pointing at Bella. "She's the breeding female." One truck swerved to follow Bella while the other continued after Max and the others. Max led his small group into the shallow creek, the cold water splashing around their paws as they raced downstream. The sound of the pursuing truck grew fainter as the creek bent through a narrow ravine, too tight for vehicles. Max's heart pounded with fear, not for himself, but for Bella. He needed to circle back somehow, to help her. The younger dogs looked to him with frightened eyes. He was responsible for them now. "Stay in the water," he commanded. "It hides our scent." They continued downstream until the creek widened near an old fence line. Max made a split-second decision. "Follow the creek to the Wilson property," he told the others. "The old man there has dogs. He'll help you." Before they could object, Max scrambled up the bank and doubled back through the forest, determined to find Bella. The sounds of pursuit had faded, but a new noise caught his attention. Men on foot, crashing through the underbrush. Max slowed, moving silently between the pine trees. Up ahead, he could make out two of the poachers, tranquilizer guns raised. They were tracking something, or someone. A faint whimper reached his ears. Bella. Without hesitation, Max darted through the forest in a wide arc, planning to circle behind the men and create a distraction. He leapt over fallen logs and ducked beneath low-hanging branches, pushing himself harder than he ever had before. In his desperate haste, Max failed to notice the thin metal wire stretched between two trees until it was too late. The barbed wire caught him across the chest and legs, its cruel barbs digging deep into his flesh. A yelp of pain escaped before he could suppress it, and Max crashed to the ground, hopelessly entangled in the poacher's trap. Pain blazed through Max's body like wildfire, each movement driving the barbed wire deeper into his flesh. Blood matted his thick fur, warm and sticky against his skin. He tried to bite at the cruel metal, but each twist only entangled him further, the sharp barbs tearing new wounds with merciless precision. The forest around him seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear the men's voices growing closer, following the sound of his pained yelp. Max's ears flattened against his head as he strained once more against his bindings, desperation lending him strength. It was no use. The wire only bit deeper. A low whine escaped his throat as exhaustion began to replace adrenaline. The morning sun filtered through the pine branches above, casting dappled shadows across his imprisoned form. Had Bella escaped? Had the younger shepherds made it to safety? The uncertainty tormented him more than his physical pain. Hope you enjoyed this story. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear where you're watching from. Now, let's continue with the story. The crack of a branch nearby froze Max's blood. A man's voice, closer now, called out, "I heard it over here, Jake." "Sounds like we got one." Max stopped struggling, instinct telling him to remain still. If they found him like this, helpless and bleeding, there would be no escape. His amber eyes darted wildly, searching for any possible salvation. Half a mile away, Robert Wilson was enjoying his morning coffee on the porch of his cabin when his radio crackled to life. At 63, the former veterinarian still served as head ranger for this section of the wildlife reserve that bordered several private properties, including the Sullivan Ranch. "Robert, you there?" The voice belonged to Sarah Thompson, one of his junior rangers. He reached for the radio. "Go ahead, Sarah." "Got reports of suspicious vehicles near the Sullivan place. Margaret's away and someone said they heard shots." Robert's weathered face creased with concern. He knew Margaret Sullivan and her prized German shepherds well. "I'm heading over. Meet me at the east fence line in 15. Within minutes, Robert was in his truck with his border collie, Rusty, riding shotgun. Sarah's call troubled him. Illegal dog-snatching operations had been reported across the county, targeting valuable purebreds. The Sullivan shepherds would be prime targets. As Robert's truck bounced along the service road that ran parallel to Willow Creek, Rusty suddenly became alert, ears pricked forward, body tense. "What is it, boy?" Robert asked, slowing the truck. Rusty whined, pawing at the window. Years of working with animals had taught Robert to trust their instincts. He stopped the truck and rolled down the window. At first, he heard nothing but the usual forest sounds: birds, the rustling of leaves, the distant murmur of the creek. Then, carried on the morning breeze, came a sound that made his blood run cold, the distinctive, pain-filled cry of a dog in distress. "Stay!" he commanded Rusty, grabbing his field kit and ranger radio. He recognized that sound all too well from his veterinary days. An animal in severe pain, possibly dying. Robert moved through the forest with the quiet efficiency of a man who had spent decades in the wilderness. The dog's cries grew louder, guiding him forward. He paused only to radio Sarah his coordinates and situation. Approaching injured animal, possibly one of Sullivan's shepherds. Potential poacher situation. Proceed with caution. As he crested a small rise, he spotted two men in the distance, moving stealthily through the trees, tranquilizer guns raised. Beyond them, barely visible through the underbrush, lay a large dog entangled in what appeared to be barbed wire. Robert's jaw tightened. 20 years ago, he'd lost his own German shepherd to poachers. The memory still burned like an open wound. Drawing his service weapon, Robert moved in a wide arc to position himself between the approaching men and the trapped animal. He could see the dog more clearly now, a magnificent German shepherd, young and strong, its coat dark with blood where the wire cut deeply. The dog's eyes met his, intelligent, pained, but still defiant. In that moment, Robert made a silent promise. This dog would not suffer the same fate his had. "Wildlife Service!" he called out, his voice echoing through the trees as he stepped into view, weapon raised. "Drop your weapons and put your hands where I can see them." The two men froze, then exchanged quick glances. The taller one, Jake Miller, though Robert didn't know his name yet, slowly lowered his tranquilizer gun. "Easy, Ranger," he said, his voice deceptively calm. "We're just tracking a stray that attacked our camp." Robert's eyes narrowed. "That's a purebred German shepherd from the Sullivan Ranch. Now drop the weapons before this gets ugly." The stillness that followed was electric with tension. Max watched through pain-hazed eyes as his fate hung in the balance between these humans, one who offered salvation, two who promised only further suffering. The standoff lasted only seconds, but for Max, each heartbeat stretched into eternity. Blood trickled from his wounds, staining the forest floor beneath him. The scarred man, Jake, kept his eyes locked on Robert, a dangerous calculation visible behind his false smile. "This is a misunderstanding," Jake said, his voice silk over steel. "We're licensed hunters tracking nuisance predators." Robert's weathered face remained impassive, his service weapon unwavering. "License and permits," he demanded, knowing full well they possessed neither. The second poacher's hand inched toward his waistband. Robert caught the movement instantly. "I wouldn't," he warned, his voice dropping to a dangerous timbre. "Sarah, what's your position?" he called into his radio, never taking his eyes off the men. Hope you enjoyed this story. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear where you're watching from. Now, let's continue with the story. 2 minutes out, Eastern approach, crackled the response. County sheriff's been notified. Something changed in Jake's demeanor, a subtle shift from confidence to desperation. His eyes darted to his companion, then back to Robert, then to Max. "We don't want trouble," Jake said, backing up a step. "Keep the damn dog." In one fluid motion, Jake hurled his tranquilizer gun at Robert and bolted, his companion following close behind. Robert sidestepped the projectile, choosing to let them flee rather than leave Max unprotected. The sound of their crashing retreat faded into the forest. "Suspects fleeing northwest," Robert reported into his radio. "I'm staying with the injured animal." Only then did Robert holster his weapon and approach Max. The shepherd's amber eyes followed his every movement, a mixture of pain, fear, and desperate hope visible in their depths. "Easy, boy," Robert murmured, crouching several feet away. "I'm here to help." Max's breathing came in shallow pants, his once proud body trembling with shock and blood loss. The barbed wire had become a cruel web, cutting deeper with each struggling movement. Robert assessed the situation with the practiced eye of a veterinarian. The wire had wrapped around Max's chest, forelegs, and neck, some barbs penetrating deeply into muscle. Moving him without proper sedation would be torture. Sarah arrived moments later, her face paling at the sight of Max's condition. "My God," she whispered, kneeling beside Robert. "Is that one of Margaret's shepherds?" Robert nodded grimly. "Get the medical kit and the wire cutters." "And call Dr. Hansen. We'll need him standing by at the clinic." Sarah worked efficiently, her hands steady despite the horror of the situation. She prepared a mild sedative, while Robert spoke continuously to Max in low, soothing tones. "You're going to feel a small pinch," Robert warned as Sarah administered the injection. "Then the pain will ease." Max flinched at the needle's sting, but Robert's gentle hand on his head provided strange comfort. The sedative worked quickly, dulling the white-hot pain to a manageable throb. The world grew slightly fuzzy around the edges, but Max remained conscious, watching through half-lidded eyes as these humans fought to save him. "Start with the neck," Robert instructed. "We need to free his airway first." With exquisite care, Sarah held the wire steady, while Robert snipped through the metal strands one by one. Each cut released another coil of the vicious wire, revealing angry red gashes beneath Max's thick fur. "That's it," Robert encouraged, as a particularly deep barb was freed. "You're doing great, boy." Blood slicked Robert's hands, making his grip treacherous on the wire cutters. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool morning air. One wrong move could drive the barbs deeper or nick an artery. After 20 agonizing minutes, the last strand of wire fell away. Max lay free but grievously wounded, his magnificent coat matted with dirt and blood. "We need to stabilize him before transport," Robert said, already reaching for the antibiotic ointment and pressure bandages. "These wounds are deep, Sarah." Sarah's hands moved deftly, cleaning each laceration with antiseptic solution. "Will he make it?" Robert didn't answer immediately. His fingers probed gently along Max's ribs, checking for additional injuries. "He's young and strong," he said finally. "If infection doesn't set in—" A distant bark interrupted him, a deep, authoritative sound that made Max's ears twitch despite his sedated state. Robert and Sarah exchanged glances. That sounds like... Sarah began. Bella, Robert confirmed, recognizing Margaret Sullivan's prize-breeding female. She must have escaped the poachers. Max's tail thumped weakly against the ground at the sound of his mother's voice. He tried to raise his head, a whine building in his throat. Easy, Robert soothed, applying the last bandage. Let's get you stabilized first. But Max's eyes remained fixed on the forest beyond, where the barking grew closer. Something flickered in those pain-glazed amber depths. Determination, perhaps, or simple longing. Robert sat back on his heels, making a difficult decision. Standard protocol demanded immediate transport to the veterinary facility. But years of working with these animals had taught him something else, something about the healing power of family. Sarah, he said quietly, I think we need to wait. Through the trees, a large shape emerged cautiously. Bella, her proud head held high, her dark eyes fixed unwaveringly on her wounded son. Bella approached with regal caution, her dark eyes never leaving the humans crouched beside her son. Her powerful body moved silently through the undergrowth, muscles tense and ready. She paused at the edge of the small clearing, nostrils flaring as she caught the metallic scent of Max's blood. Robert remained perfectly still, one hand gently resting on Max's shoulder. It's okay, Bella, he murmured, using the soothing tones that had calmed countless animals throughout his career. We're helping him. Sarah tensed beside him. Should we move back? No sudden movements, Robert whispered. She needs to understand we're not a threat. Hope you enjoyed this story. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear where you're watching from. Now, let's continue with the story. Max lifted his head weakly at his mother's approach, a soft whine escaping his throat. The sound seemed to make up Bella's mind. She advanced with deliberate steps, her focus shifting entirely to her wounded son. That's it, Robert encouraged, slowly withdrawing his hand from Max's fur. He's all yours, Mama. Bella circled Max once, then lowered her muzzle to gently nose at his bandages. Her inspection was thorough, maternal concern evident in every movement. Finally satisfied that the immediate danger had passed, she settled on the ground beside Max, pressing her warm body against his. The transformation was immediate. Max's rigid muscles relaxed, his breathing steadied, and his eyes, which had been glazed with pain, seemed to clear. He rested his muzzle against Bella's neck in a gesture of profound trust. I've never seen anything like it, Sarah whispered, awestruck by the visible healing power of this reunion. Robert nodded, a bittersweet smile crossing his weathered face. Family is the best medicine sometimes. The radio at his belt crackled to life. Robert, come in, called a deep voice belonging to Sheriff Davis. We've apprehended 2 suspects with tranquilizer guns and transport cages. Any sign of the third? Negative, Robert replied. But we've secured 1 injured shepherd. The others are still unaccounted for. As if summoned by his words, barking erupted from the direction of the creek. Bella's head shot up, ears forward. 3 German shepherds emerged from the tree line, led by an elderly black-and-white border collie, Rusty, who had clearly abandoned his stay command to round up the scattered shepherds. Well, I'll be damned, Robert chuckled as Rusty trotted up, looking immensely pleased with himself. The other shepherds hung back uncertainly until Bella gave a soft woof of recognition. They rushed forward then, forming a protective circle around Max. Sarah's eyes welled with tears at the sight. "They're all safe." "Not quite all," Robert reminded her, scanning the reunited pack. "Margaret's record shows 7 shepherds. We have 6 accounted for." Bella seemed to understand. She rose suddenly, moving a few paces away before looking back at them expectantly. Her meaning was clear. "Follow me." Robert hesitated, glancing at Max. "He's not stable enough to move yet." "I'll stay with him," Sarah offered, already checking the bandages. "You go." With a nod, Robert followed Bella into the forest, Rusty trotting at his heels. The female shepherd led them on a winding path through the trees, frequently looking back to ensure they kept pace. After 10 minutes, they reached a small ravine where the creek had carved a natural barrier. There, half hidden beneath an overhanging bank, lay the 7th shepherd, an older male with a greying muzzle. His rear leg was clearly broken, likely from the chase. "Oh, old fellow," Robert breathed, approaching slowly. This would complicate matters, but with both Sarah and himself, they could transport both injured dogs to safety. An hour later, Margaret Sullivan's driveway filled with vehicles: Robert's truck, the sheriff's cruiser, and Dr. Hanson's mobile veterinary unit. Max had been carefully moved to the porch of the main house, his wounds properly cleaned and sutured. The older shepherd, Thunder, had his leg set and splinted. Both would recover fully with time and care. Sheriff Davis approached Robert, who was washing blood from his hands with a garden hose. "Got all 3 poachers in custody. Jake Miller's gang has hit 3 counties with this dog-stealing operation." Robert nodded grimly. Margaret Shepherd's would have fetched a high price. "We've called her. She's driving back from Billings now, should be here by evening." The sheriff glanced at the dogs assembled protectively around their injured packmates. "Hell of a thing you did today, Robert." Robert shook his head. "They did most of it themselves, especially Max. That young dog saved the others by drawing the poachers away." As the afternoon shadows lengthened, Robert sat on the porch steps, watching Max doze with his head resting on Bella's flank. The shepherd's eyes opened briefly, meeting Robert's gaze with what seemed like understanding. When Margaret's car finally pulled into the driveway, the entire pack, except for the injured Max and Thunder, rushed to greet her. The silver-haired woman dropped to her knees amid her beloved dogs, checking each one before looking up at Robert with tear-filled eyes. "Sheriff Davis told me what happened," she said, her voice breaking. "How can I ever thank you?" Robert helped her to her feet and led her to the porch where Max lay. "Thank him," he said softly. "He's the real hero of this story." Margaret knelt beside Max, gently stroking his head. The shepherd's tail thumped weakly against the porch boards. "My brave boy," she whispered. As twilight settled over Willow Creek Ranch, Robert packed his gear to leave. The crisis had passed. The family was reunited. Looking back at the house, he saw Margaret sitting on the porch swing, surrounded by her dogs, with Max and Bella closest to her side. Some wounds would take time to heal, but the deepest needs, for family, for belonging, for protection, those had been met today. And that, Robert knew, was the greatest healing of all.